And welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to another week, another edition of the Korean StarCraft League, week number 46. I'm, of course, host Live VIP, and with me, I'm joined by these amazing players and the lovely people in the chat as well. Welcome, everyone. Welcome to your bi-weekly dose of Korean StarCraft. And for those that are maybe a little bit unaware, this cast. Today's KSL cast is going to be a replay cast, but these replays, they're still hot. They're still hot out the oven. They're a couple of hours old. For those that are curious, the event did take place, I want to say 4 or 5 hours ago. A handful of hours ago, the event did take place, but it was just at an ungodly time, at least here in Europa, as I'm currently residing in Poland, at least for another couple of days. And as a result, we're going to be going over this going over the event via replays instead, just a couple of hours later, a couple of hours after the fact. So for those of you that missed the event live, which again was, around 5 or so hours ago, now you can bear witness with the rest of us. Instead. Oh boy, and today's going to be a bit of a longer one because we're going over the KSL, that is true, but we are also going to be diving into Stars War 11, the Asia Closed Qualifier, day number 2. That's also in a couple of hours. Now, the current plan is we could do this a couple of different ways. If we wanted to, we could start with the KSL cast, and then when the qualifier starts, we could switch over to the Stars War qualifier and cast it live. But especially because the Stars War kind of connection, the clean feed is a little bit shaky, I'm okay with casting all of KSL first. We finish KSL, and then we take a bit of a break, and then we go over the Stars War 11 Asia qualifier, which would be like a couple of hours after it's gone live. So we'll be catching up, and the games will be a couple of hours old. But only a couple of hours, so he'll be fine. Just again because the connection to the clean feed is a little bit shaky, just because the VPN, sometimes their connection to YouTube and stuff like that is a little bit shaky. So we'll just be going over that afterwards instead. So yeah, back to back broadcasts here. KSL into Stars War 11. We got you covered. And we have quite a number of matches before us. We have a round of 16 match. To kick things off, we have a PvP between NightMare and Trigger. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We have 8 series to go through. So it's going to be a bit of a longer broadcast here tonight. But I am ready for it. I'm ready for all the StarCraft. Gib, Papi, Gib. For those who are curious as well, I'm going to be returning to Australia in less than a week. It's in a couple of days. I'm going to be traveling, so exciting times ahead of us. I'm going to be returning. It does mean that the webcam is going to be back. We can say goodbye to this screenshot for now, which is a shame. The screenshot has served us well for quite some time. It's lovely, it's beautiful, it's amazing. But but the cam will be returning, and maybe I can use this screenshot somewhere else later on. We'll figure it out. We will figure it out. But regardless, we're getting into game number 1. It's going to be on Hardlead in this PvP. Let's go. And I glossed over it, but I'm very excited to see Trigger here. I'm very excited to see Trigger as a part of this event, just because we very rarely see players from the Americas. We very rarely see players from the Americas actually, taking part in the KSL. Sometimes we get Estrella. I believe currently Estrella is living in the Americas. But if I'm not mistaken, it was recently announced that I think, is Estrella going to live with Trigger? Is Trigger going to live with Estrella? One is going to the other. I know that much. I think they are staying together for a little bit. I'm not sure how long they're going to be staying together, but they are kind of moving in for a bit of a boot camp in the lead up to ESL, in the lead up to EPT Spring, which is DreamHack Dallas in the Americas. And I think they might also be going to, there's like a NorCal LAN that's on the horizon as well. So there's a bunch of events going on in the Americas, and they are joining forces, at least for a time. As we're getting into game 1 and spawning in the bottom right-hand corner of Hardlead, we have our South Korean Protoss player, the Blue Protoss, representing himself, currently teamless. It is NightMare. Trigger's coming to Australia. Yeah, that's it. I was like, I know one of them is going to the other. I know some kind of like merging of the Kala is going to be occurring in NA, and it's going to be disturbing. but amazing at the same time. Speaking of, in the top left-hand corner, we have the Canadian Protoss player, the Red Protoss, representing Team Basilisk. It is Trigger. Can we at least make Light keep the facial expression for when he gets the webcam back? What do you mean? That's always my facial expression, Bobby. What do you mean? Oh. You think that's a screenshot? No. It's a video. It's it's a recording. It's just me. Oh no. Not like this. It's on loop. As we are settling into our PvPs for the time being, double gate opener, 2 gate opener here at a Trigger, likewise a 2 gate opener at a NightMare. Yo, it feels so refreshing actually controlling the camera. It's like yesterday, for the past couple of days, we've been casting. I'd say yesterday we were casting from a clean feed, and oh, it's so freeing. We can see whatever we want, but we can zoom, we can swoosh, we can swish. It's beautiful. It's crazy. Let's go. So liberating. As for the time being, it's going to be 2 gate openers all around. Pylons have been thrown down in the main base, so no proxy for the time being for either Trigger or NightMare. And we're getting into our first 2 units of choice, and our units of choice are going to be Double Stalker from Trigger, Double Stalker out of NightMare, mirrored builds for the time being. Of course, with Double Stalker, we can follow this up with additional Stalkers and maintain map control and be assertive towards our opponents. We can catch Adepts if it was an Adept opener, and we can just be, overall gaining map control here. Ooh, as Trigger follows up with a Robo. Okay, Trigger, this looks like this can transition to one base all in. He throws down the pylon on the low ground, but I'm not sure if we're going to be investing here into that Nexus. Meanwhile, NightMare is going to be following this up with additional Stalkers, so he will have the Stalker lead, getting up to a 3rd and 4th Stalker. Meanwhile, back at home, again, to me, this Robo reads a 3rd gateway, and there it is. There's a 3rd gateway, and this looks like a one base all in. It's a one base all in here at a Trigger. He's doubling down. Meanwhile, NightMare has no idea what's going on, but he soon will as he moves out. He's going to be moving out. He's going to be checking his opponent, but he's going to be met by the first 2 Stalkers. I say that. First 2 Stalkers are coming in from behind. We're going in for the surround. We collapse on the army. We got a surround, and NightMare, he's going to be bleeding out a Stalker already. Big pickoff. 1 Stalker goes down. The other taking some whole damage as well. We're trying to get the hell out of here, but we may lose the 2nd Stalker. Oh, God. A couple more shots, 2 more hits, and it will go down, but it looks like it will barely waddle away. Meanwhile, behind this, again, we have the Prism on the horizon. Trigger is going for the all-in. He's going to be reinforcing across the map. NightMare is still not fully aware of what's going on. He has expanded. There is a shield battery on the low ground. We do have a couple of sentries for force fields. We do have that available at least. Oh! As we dive on the army, good control here. We trade 1 for 1. But we have an overwhelming army. Trigger takes out another Stalker. Shield battery does finish up. With the completion of the shield battery, we force back the army. 2 force fields were thrown down. That was a little bit wasteful, and now we have no energy left here for either force fields, for the Guardian Shield, or even sentries, or even hallucinations. As we are reinforcing, and now we're fully aware of the all-in. We see the Prism. NightMare now knows what's going on. And can he survive this? Can he respond in time? He did go for his own Robo. Sentry's going to be focused down one after the other. We do have that shield battery with plenty of energy. We can overcharge. We're holding on to it. Shield battery gets focused down. A good target firing at a NightMare, though. Yeah, a bit of miscontrol at his Trigger. Bleeds out one of those Stalkers. But again, he does overwhelm. He does take control of the low ground. He will get a kill on the Nexus, which is okay. We can afford to lose it. And the Immortal has arrived. And these Stalkers, they're so low. Again, the Immortal can one-shot. Can we somehow hold on here? We do warp into Sentry. We do have a force field available. Remember, Trigger, he doesn't have an expansion. He's all in. So killing this base is not the end of the world for NightMare. There we go. NightMare trying to hold on to his main. Throws down the shield battery. 2nd Immortal is about to arrive. Does make it out here. Does make it out in time. We do see Trigger trying to force his way up the ramp. Is going to be able to break through the shields. Getting a bit of hull damage. Again, decent control here at a Trigger. Looking at the Unicell stab, he's almost 3 Stalkers. So good control at a Trigger. But you can see how vulnerable this army is. So much of this is deep in the red, yellow, orange. It doesn't take too many hits at all for this army to crumble. So he has to be very careful with how he does execute. Behind this, he's expanding. Okay, I like this. I like this a lot. So Trigger, he's going to be backing off. He's containing his opponent, but he's going to be expanding behind this, trying to get ahead economically. Immortals are being dropped over the wall. They do get one Stalker. Oh! Only one Stalker so far. Trigger gonna be pulling back. And again, all Trigger has to do is survive the counterattack. Like, he's done the damage he was looking for. Trigger, he's slightly ahead in workers. Oh, the Prism does sneak out. Uh-oh. This also means that we don't have the Immortals to defend. The Immortals are not at home to defend, but they're going across the map for a big counterattack. Trigger trying to force his way in. We do have force fields. Yeah, the first force field thrown down. Gateways, they stay powered. And the Immortals, they force a recall. Big moment here for NightMare. Forces a recall. Ooh. Oh my god. Gets away with the Prism, just barely. Avoids those shots, killed a couple of Stalkers, and just like that, NightMare, he breaks free. Breaks free from the contain. He did spot the pylon, but he's going to keep on pushing. At the same time, Trigger going for his own counterattack. The Immortals, they come back in, they depower the Robo. Robo's depowered, that's a kill on another pylon. Only one Immortal left here for Trigger. Only one Immortal so far. Good control. We focused on a couple of Stalkers. NightMare, he does bounce out. Has an army threatening that natural base. At the same time, Prism is denied entry into the main base. NightMare, he has defenses back at home. He has a couple of Stalkers. You can see Trigger trying to slip in with an Adept. NightMare going for his own expand. Is behind in the economy. Adepts, they do shade in. And they do commit. Yeah, they commit to the shade. Probes should be targeted. Yeah, we're going to get one at least. Going to get 2, 3, maybe even 4. Yeah, 4 probes full. We shouldn't get a 5th though. There we go. 4 workers in total. Pretty good damage dealt here, but Trigger still has that lead. He's still up in workers, up in economy. Goes to the force fields. Good juggling out of NightMare. Does keep his Immortals alive. They counter force fields as well. Oh! The Immortal is barely saved. Trigger, calm down. NightMare trying to force the issue, forcing the overcharge. And NightMare, he won't be able to break this. Ooh, barely gets a sentry. And so far has been able to outtrade Trigger here. Was able to kill additional Stalkers. Able to kill additional sentries. Trigger does at least maintain his Immortals. He has kept them alive. That is true. We're coming in for the flank. Oh! We're trying to go for the Immortals. Does get the Adepts and the Sentries. Sentry escapes. Immortals, they do as well. But you can see that NightMare, he's trying to bounce back. Still behind in the economy. Trigger on his 3 gateways. Looking to go for a blink, I imagine, with his Twilight Council. Meanwhile, NightMare, he snuck out a much faster Twilight Council. Blink already on the way. There's going to be a window here. The Prism, no! The Prism goes down. 1 Immortal falls. We get the 2nd Immortal as well. Big catch there for NightMare. Ay, ay, ay. He had control of the Zelnaga. He catches the War Prism, and that was huge. Just like that, the Immortal count is reset. Oh, my apologies. We have 1 Immortal in the main base. We had 3, down to 1. And now NightMare takes an Immortal lead. Ay, ay, ay. And now we can push in. Now we totally can try to break this. Overcharge is on cooldown. Has gotten out of cooldown, just waiting for energy. Adepts, they shade into the main base. Probes are going down. We're diving on the army. We do have that overcharge. Just need a little bit more time here. Immortals trying to force their way in. Yeah, shield batteries, they're running out of energy. The Immortal trying to come back here. Another force field. I mean, there's no War Prism. We cannot engage. The Immortal stuck on the other side of the wall. And NightMare just taking advantage of Trigger. The overcharge does buy some time. Immortal finally breaks down. Finally pushes down here towards the natural. NightMare, he backs off. And just like that, NightMare, he's caught up in workers. He has the 3rd base on the way. Blink is now done for our blue Protoss. Not quite starting off here for our red. We're going for charge instead. Interesting. We're rushing into charge to Archon. We're avoiding Blink Stalkers. Okay. We're going to be avoiding those Stalkers. Behind this, we're going for some big warp-ins. The Immortal count is amassing. And this is the biggest concern that I have, which I think is why we're going for charge, is that we have a massive Immortal lead. We have 4 Immortals here, and Immortals, they just have their way with Stalkers. Stalkers and Immortals of their own kind. So I do like that we're rushing into charge health instead. They're a really good way to soak immortal hits and stalker hits as well. They're just a really good buffer force. And because we have the immortal disadvantage, or because our opponent has the immortal lead, does make sense here. But Trigger, he's stuck on 2 bases. NightMare extending his lead. And just getting that third base fully saturated, and especially based on the fact that we have a 4th gateway on the way, Trigger, he may just go all in. What's scary is that Trigger doesn't know there's a 3rd. So I was going to say, like, he could make the choice. Like, if he sees the 3rd base, he can just go for the all in and try to break him. But maybe he's hoping that that's the case. Yeah, how many gateways are we on? 6. We're on 6 gates. We're pushing out with everything we have. It's all or nothing for Trigger. His second all in of the game. Bleeds out of Stalker. Again, good blinks out of NightMare. Remember, NightMare has blink. Trigger doesn't. Warping in an extra wave of these zealots. So far doing well, diving on top of the army, headed towards those immortals, but there are shield batteries. There's an overcharge as well. Overcharge is popped. We're trying to break through. So far, good juggling here by NightMare, keeping those immortals alive. And he just burned through all the zealots. The zealots, they've all gone down. We're getting on top of the Archon as well. We need more zealots, Papi. They're coming in. They're barely breaking through, and it looks like we finally get one of the immortals. But we come in from behind. We set up a surround. The boys are being pulled. The prism goes down. And NightMare, he will swallow up this army. Gets a surround off. And Trigger, he will lose everything. GG gets called. NightMare takes game number 1. Whew. GG. Oh my god. GG, well played. A very intense game. And what I will say is that initially Trigger was doing very well for himself. Remember, he was able to hide his build. He was able to catch NightMare off guard. And with Trigger's initial 1 base all in, he killed the natural base of his opponent. He was able to get a kill. He was able to disrupt the production. Was able to get his own expansion and take a lead economically. It was a good start. It was a good start for Trigger. The follow-up is where NightMare kind of went Super Saiyan, and he was just hyper fixated on counterattacking, on his juggling, on his micro, and NightMare was able to outtrade Trigger. On top of that, there was the pivotal moment as well where he caught the prism and he caught the immortals. That was huge. Like, that suddenly swung everything, or swung quite a bit in NightMare's favor, and that allowed NightMare, after those 2 immortals died, that allowed him to push into the natural. And if you remember, that's when the follow-up fight occurred, where Trigger, half his army wasn't able to defend, half his army wasn't able to protect his natural because it was being force fielded at the ramp. And that force field was effective because, I should emphasize, it wasn't just that 2 immortals got sniped, but the war prism also got sniped. So that reduced the amount of micro and juggling that Trigger could do defensively as well. And NightMare was able to just take a really good fight, trade or outtrade his opponent, gain map control, and take it from there. GG. GG, well played. A really nice comeback there from NightMare. But we'll see if we can bounce back as we're getting ready for game number 2. We're going to be loading in to Solaris. Let's go. Is this a live game? Replays are a couple of hours old. There you go. Beautiful. As we're getting into game number 2, and spawning in the top right-hand corner of Solaris, we have our South Korean Protoss player, the Blue Protoss, representing himself, currently teamless, but leading the series. It is NightMare. And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner, we have his opponent, we have the Canadian Protoss player, the Red Protoss, representing Basilisk. It is Trigger. Again, he has to fight back here and now to force that ace match. I want to believe he can. And again, like last game, that 1 base all in did work quite well, did give him a solid lead, but it did slip through his fingers. His opponent was able to bounce back. What is going to be our plan coming into game number 2? I don't expect another 1 base all in. Usually if you do it once in a series, whether it works, whether it doesn't, you typically want to deviate away from it and go for a different strategy, especially in PvP where you have a lot of diversity. You have a lot of flexibility with your builds. There is a lot available here for both our players, as we're going for 2 gate openers. Double gateway out of NightMare, double gateway out of Trigger. I see in the chat, is this live games? This is a replay cast. It is in the title of the stream. They'll say the replay cast, Pappy replay. But the replays are a couple of hours old. KSL was a couple of hours ago. And now we are here going over those replays. But now we do see our players scouting each other. NightMare, he confirms the positioning of the second pylon. Likewise, Trigger also slips in, also does confirm the positioning of the second pylon as well, or at least we'll soon be able to. Just making sure that there is no proxy. Yeah, we do scout, we do confirm, and with that, Trigger, he is going to back off, and from here, we're getting into our openers, into our first couple of units of choice. It is going to be double Adept out of Trigger and double Stalker out of NightMare. Okay, let's go. Unless you face the unrepentant Max Packs, and one base all in is the only fair game. True, true. I hope it catches on what Hero's been doing, right? Like we've seen for the past couple of weeks in ESL Americas, Hero looking dominant over Max Packs, not going for one base all. He sprinkled one base all ins like every now and then, but really going into 2-base play, going for mind games instead. It's been really fascinating watching Hero play against Max Packs and see their kind of meta between the two of them unfold over the past month, I would say, like post IM. It's really cool to see. It's been very interesting, to say the least. A lot of mind games. But you're right, like everyone else is just one base solid. As we are going to be committing here to Adepts, it isn't just 2, we're going up to 4, we're going up to 6 Adepts, maybe even 8 behind this as well. So a very aggressive style here out of Trigger. Very aggressive as he will be chasing down one of those Stalkers. He should be able to get a kill. Additional Stalkers, they have arrived though. They do reinforce, and NightMare throws down a pylon to warp in across the map. Is expanding behind this, not one base all in. You see NightMare, he's going for a Twilight Council, going towards Blink. Has to be careful, has to respect the amount of Adepts there are. Or as they do shade in. Trying to focus down another Stalker. Behind this, it is going to be a Robo follow-up. This should be for a Warp Prism to try to get these Adepts into the main base. As of course, Adepts, they can try to shade, but we could also just lift them up and ferry them in. No, it's going to be Immortal. Okay. Very interesting. We're going Immortal first instead. I mean, this does make sense if we want a longer game as we bypass the army. The Stalkers are going straight for the natural base. Adepts know where they need to be. They do catch a reinforcing sentry. Yeah, they do catch a sentry. Big pick off. But the pylon goes down. We focus on a couple of probes, and do we recall? Oh, we do have to recall, but we bleed out 2 Stalkers in the process. So 2 Stalkers for 3 probes, but we do force back the army. The army was forced back, and NightMare, he can reinforce. He does take a worker lead. And he's going to take a position here on top of the ramp, waiting for the army to arrive. I believe the first Immortal has arrived. We have additional Immortals behind this. Trigger, he is quite committed here. Again, Trigger just avoiding any kind of upgrades, no Forge, no Twilight Council, just brute forcing his way in. Immortal Adept. It's a pretty scary army that Trigger's working with, don't get me wrong. But so far, NightMare handling himself well. Does try to keep up. Probes are going down. At the same time, across the map, but MC shade in. Trigger, he loses 6 workers in his main base. He's going to get a couple of probe kills, but we can focus down the army. Yeah, Trigger, he does overextend. Probes are falling. Actually, getting quite a lot of worker kills, but he gonna get the Immortal. He can. The Immortal goes down. And if they shade further into the middle line, but NightMare, he still has a worker lead. He's got 29 probes to the 20 of Trigger. Yeah, Adepts are being focused down one after the other. Blink is now done, so we can chase this down even further. Oh, we trigger the shields on the Immortal. Prism has arrived, but there's not much here to support. And Trigger, he hasn't made a single worker. He's all in. He's one base all in, essentially. 0 economy, 0 workers at his natural. Which is why, even though he was killing probes, it didn't matter. Like NightMare, he can afford to bleed out workers. Trigger is all in. But the problem is that he just can't even break the natural here. Can't even break the natural. Good juggling, but there's only one immortal. Shields are triggered. Adept goes down. Now, because of this War Prism, we could try to bypass this front door. We could try to ferry into the main, but there's a backup shield battery in the main base as well. NightMare, he's ready for that. Yeah, second shield battery does finish. Overcharge is popped. Oof, oh my god. Bold move out of NightMare, gets a volley off. Dealing quite a bit of damage to that immortal. And Trigger is just warping in whatever he can afford, even a Zealot. It's all he can do. NightMare looks like he realized what's going on. He pulls the boys. We go for the Prism. Prism's going to be focused down. We can focus down the Immortals thereafter. Yeah, we will shut this down. The Immortals fall. We bleed out 6 probes, but it doesn't matter. We can throw all the probes away. Feels bad, man, for the probes, but we don't need them. And with the death of that War Prism, that's the death of this push. Like, we can't reinforce, we can't micro our units. But the problem is that Trigger can't back off from here. He is reprobing, though. He is making workers. As he rotates around, ooh, NightMare. Okay, he's pulling back. I was going to say he's going to commit. He's just harassing with adepts. He's thinking about pushing. Okay. And we kind of might end up in a weird base trade. Or do we recall? We're coming back home. Yeah, NightMare is racing back home. Was caught out of position. And from here, Trigger can recall. Honestly, a really good move by Trigger. Gets 3 probes, forces back the army, recalls back home. But he's still losing his own probes as well. Ooh. Losing his own 3 workers. Almost 4. And no shield batteries. Oh boy. No shield batteries, no overcharge, no side defense here at the natural. I mean, again, Trigger was all in. There was no reason to throw down any side defense. He was forced into the recall. So he is looking a little bit vulnerable here. He's going to be stuck at home. At NightMare, he's going to be resaturating his bases, getting into his own robo. And we might just settle from here. Things might calm down a little bit. Stalkers doing what they can. But they can't break this. Not with 2 Immortals. Not without a War Prism. Oh, we can blink in! No, we dive into the main. We snipe an Immortal. Oh. Yeah, big pick off there by NightMare. Getting a little bit greedy towards the end. A little bit greedy. As once again, shades into the main base, picks up a Stalker. NightMare just dancing around the army. Once again, getting high ground vision. Oh, doesn't go for it. Doesn't go for the blink. He was thinking about it. Behind this, he's getting a 3rd base. He is getting his 3rd base up and running. You can see him just dancing with the army again. He cannot fight this head on. Not with 2 Immortals. I'm not so confident that NightMare can take that fight. But that's why he's building up his own Immortals back at home. He's refining his army. He's distracting the main force of Trigger while he's getting ready for a backstab with more adepts. It's been the MO for NightMare for quite some time here. Just keeping the army busy. Defending the Prism. Pulling away the attention. His adepts are ready to dive in. Ooh, and Trigger moves out, by the way. NightMare sees this. He sees the move out. He can go for a counterattack. Remember, NightMare, he has recall available. So he can get damage done. He can snipe and depower some of these production buildings. Yeah, he's depowering the gateways. And then he can recall. Back at home, we have Immortals to defend. We have shield batteries as well. We're going for the kill. We want some more economic damage. Shield batteries are depowered. We're going for the robo. We're going full base trade. We're going full base trade at the moment. Trigger pulling the boys, getting them out of there. So he can throw down a Nexus. And in the main base, NightMare, he's getting ready to defend. Yeah, we have force fields. We do force field the ramp. We have one more force field available. It is thrown down. Good juggling so far. And at this point, we recall. We recall into the main. NightMare, he lost his natural. Meanwhile, Trigger lost his main, and he lost all of his production. He cannot reinforce. What you see is what you get. 13 Stalkers, 3 Immortals. Oh, the Prism goes down! Big pick off there by NightMare. He gets the War Prism. And Trigger, he should be able to kill this third base, but again, it doesn't really matter. Yeah, we dive on the army, focus on 1. We get 1 Immortal, we get 2, we get all 3. And now it's only Stalkers left. And Probes. GG gets called. The writing was on the wall. There's nothing left there for Trigger, and NightMare will take the series 2-0. GG. GG, well played. An interesting all-in out of Trigger that game. An all-in that I don't see too often, where basically he got a fake natural. He expanded, yes, but if you remember, he was not making any probes at all. He was going for an Adept Immortal-based all-in, rushing into Immortal production, and initially he was doing okay, but he was being outmaneuvered. We saw the Stalker backstab and counterattacks were non-stop, at least initially, before realizing that it wasn't all-in. And again, NightMare, he had everything he needed to defend. On top of that, rushing into Blink just paid off so well for him. He was just doing such a good job at just picking away at the army of Trigger, whether it was Stalkers, Immortals, or the War Prism. But again, it's one of those things where if you are going for a one-base all-in like that, you need to get momentum on your side early on, and Trigger just wasn't able to get that with that GG. GG, well played. Congratulations here to NightMare as he does take the series 2-0. And NightMare, he advances on into the quarterfinals. This was a round of 16 match. He advances on to the quarterfinals, where NightMare is going to be facing off against Dark. Let's go. Let's